Group 5.
Hello and welcome to our presentation, Role of Women in the British Society.
In the 1800 to 1920, most widowed or unmarried women were used as domestic servants. The stereotypical role of a married woman was to look after their children while their husband brought money in, and the role of an unmarried woman was to provide services such as waitressing and cooking. Divorced women were shunned from society. Women rarely married because of true love. They married mostly because of status and money.
During this time, women had no rights, and there were many movements to change this. One such movement was met by a law. This law stated that if a marriage broke down and parents divorced, then children under the age of 7 would stay with the mother. In 1857, women could divorce a cruel or abusive husband, or a husband that had left or abandoned her. 1870 brought that women were able to keep the money that they earned, and in 1891 women didn't have to live with their husbands if they wished not to. However, these laws were better on paper than they were in real life because of the Victorian attitude towards women. The Victorian attitude was that they should stay at home and look after their husband, and they weren't really following the stereotypical role of the women.
At the start of the 21st century, women had a very stereotypical role in the British society. If they were married, they have to look after the children, clean the house and make the food, while the husband worked and brought in weekly wages. However, if unmarried, they still worked as waitresses, which they still cooked, even though women in that time were simply expected to get married and have children.
Women were expected to marry and bear children in the 19th century. There was a shortage of men. The census figures, the registration population at any one time, the period revealed, there were far more women than there were men. Women were outnumbered by men. No, women outnumbered men for 3 main reasons. Firstly, the maturity rate was higher for boys. Second, a larger number of boys served the armed forces. Thirdly, men were more likely to immigrate than women.
The law in Britain was based on the idea that women would get married and their husband would look after them. The Act in 1882, the Unmarried Property Act, was when women would get married and pass on their money to their husband. After this was passed, women were able to keep their own money.
The idea was that the upper and middle class women would stay reliant on a man their whole life, first as a daughter and then as a wife. Women struggled for divorce. However, a man could use the Matrimonial Cause Act of 1857, which on the grounds of adultery. However, a woman could not use the same grounds, even if the husband had been proved unfaithful. Children became the man's property, and sometimes women were even prevented from seeing their children.
Marriage in the 19th century was hard. Women were expected to bear children and keep the house fed. As you can see in this source, it shows a woman and a husband at that time of period. Also, a woman was not to question her husband about money. As you can see in here, the man is furious that the woman has asked him. This was really typical during this time period.
Women in today's society are far better off. They are allowed to and expected to earn their own money, whereas it used to be given to the husband. However, this raises problems because women are still expected to raise the family and keep the house, even though they are working as well as bringing in the income for the family. We now have single parent families, and they are pressured, and they are so pressured, and so they're pressured on the family, if it's single mothers, to do everything at once. They have to become a traditional mother figure, as well as providing income which back in the 19th century would have been left to the father. Women have many roles today in society. Partner, mother, daughter, sister, money earner, financial planner, housekeeper, dietitian, nurse, psychologist, taxi and teacher.
Women have made a massive change in the past 100 years. Women have gone from being like Tess with no rights to people like Miss Welford being head teachers and female doctors.
Thomas Hardy was one of the first to strongly disagree with the way in which women were treated between 1814 and 1928. He presented some of his views in Tess of the D'Urbervilles.
The story of Tess was seen as a controversial story because it discusses the purity of women's faith. And the fact that Hardy named Tess of D'Urberville, which was subtitled Pure Woman's Faithful Presented, this was the controversial because Tess was seen as a fallen woman.
Thank you for listening.
Fantastic. Questions? Come on. Do you want that matrimonial act to be cleared up a bit? Did you understand it? You did? Okay. We'll stop there because I can hear them coming in.